I think it's important, by the way, to go through the bond process. You guys talk about it, see all the time. The fact that people don't realize it's a loan that you go out there, and the fact is they say, $150 million, where did we get that number? And then you say there's leftover. How come you didn't know exactly how much it was going to cost? And maybe just how you go through that process. And then if you'll add to it, they say, well, why don't you plan for the future? You know, let's just do it once and be done and do it right. Where are we at as far as you can be able to plan? So the first question is, what is the bond process? And then secondly, you know, how come you don't know exactly what it'll cost and how do you deal with that? And then thirdly, just simply how that money is spent and work through that process.
When you talk about the bond process, and then I'd be happy to talk about some of these other questions that you have.
So the process to bond is it's a very tricky business to figure out what it's going to cost you and how much to bond for. And you know, we all go into public service with our eyes wide open, and we realize that every decision we make is publicly critiqued and oftentimes publicly criticized one way or the other. And but these are men and women that want to do the very best that they can, and they try their best to make this a plausible, fair process that the community can buy into and get behind. So the bond process basically starts with, as we decide what we want to construct, we meet with a lot of experts. We meet with architects, and this is before we select our own architect or our own contractor. We meet with architects, we meet with contractors. We have our maintenance operations manager, Francis Harrison, that is part of a construction association here in the state. He gets a lot of information through them. We talk with neighboring districts like Alpine, that's always building schools, always having construction programs going in place. And we try and come up with the best number we can so that we will hit it, not be too far over, but not be under. And it's certainly better to be a little bit over than it is to be under. If you come in under, that's an ugly situation, as we found out, as the previous board and the previous superintendent found out back in '09 or back in '06 when that all started. So once we gather all the information we can and we have all this expert advice, as we go and we look at the most recent bid schools, and we use that data. We use inflation costs as determined by the Utah Construction Association that's taken place in the interim, and we come up with a number. And that's the number we put out as our bond number.
Which is a really good best guess.
That's exactly what it is, a really good best guess.
What?
I don't know if there's any resident in this county that hasn't done a few construction projects that can't remember, you know, when they pulled that first piece of tile off the bathroom and started remodeling, that they end up over budget, and it's a difficult thing not to do. But we've worked very hard to make sure that we don't do that, and you have to rely on some predictability. Back in '06 to '09, the predictability kind of flew out the window when those inflation costs went crazy, and annual increases looked more like monthly increases. And,
so you're literally going out there saying, this is our number, this is our best guess, then you put it out to a bond and say, hey, we need some money, and then someone has to come say, we'll loan you the money.
That's right, and it takes several months to prepare to pass a bond resolution, even a year's time, and maybe 2 or 3 years of discussion and study. And so all the time you're making a prediction for a number of years down the road. So once you put the bond resolution on, you have to name your number. You have to name your number. And once you do that, it's hard to change it. You'll get criticized if you do. So you kind of have to come up with a number, stick to it to the best you can, go through the process of passing the bond resolution, which we're trying to do now. Once that takes place, then you have to finish the design so that you have a design for contractors to bid. Most school districts, including our school district, hire an architect prior to the bond passing. You have to, or you're going to cost yourself maybe 6 to 8% in your cost if you're bidding in the middle of the summer. You have to bid, the earlier you bid, the better. And you know, we were able to bid our last bond at the end of January, and that's one of the reasons why it came in so far under budget. So that's part of the process. You keep kind of knocking down these steps. In our case, again, we finish the design after the bond passes. We put it out to bid, hopefully the end of January, the first week of February, somewhere in that time frame.
So we'll make sure I understand this. A bond is literally, you go out and get all the information you can, you put some numbers together, and again, it's your best guess.
That's right.
You then have to go through and basically apply for a loan and have someone say, yes, we'll give you that loan. And that's on the bond market.
That's right.
Stocks and bonds, right? And the bond market comes in and says, okay, we'll give you a loan based on the risk, based on your history, based on how well you've paid in the past, your data, and so forth and so on. And they go through a long process with you as well. And then you have to build it based on what a bid process is, and you don't really know exactly until it's all finished what it will be, and then you finish up at that end and you have exact terms. So when people have an accusation, that's maybe too strong of a word, but when they accuse, my goodness, they didn't even know exactly what it would cost, and they were off here or there, or high or low, how come they didn't know that? This is why.
Well, and there's things that we just don't have control over, such as weather. In a particular year, as you're building over a couple winters, you don't know how severe those will be and what that could cost.
But every contractor has winter conditions built into their contract. So if the winter conditions are more than what's deemed as normal, then you know that can add some cost to your bid. And that's something that we saw on the previous high school back in the 06, you know, that when we were building that school. But yes, it's an educated guess is the best that it is. But I think that our forecast right now looks very strong that we're going to be able to come in under budget on this bond.
And our experience of being able to bond in the past has helped us be more educated and understand when we want to have this passed and when we want to have it out for bid to get the very best possible interest rate that we can.
Let's talk about